Welcome to 1111. I have Brian here today. Hey, Brian.
What's up, Tony?
Good to have you. Want to jump right into our inner work questions. And with that, what does inner work mean for you? And how did you stay committed?
I think this my answer would have changed over a period of time. I thought inner work was at the beginning the stuff that you do. It's the breath work and it's the meditation and it's the introspection and maybe even like doing strange things like eye gazing with other people. Like that's the inner work, right? If the outer work is at the gym or the outer work is at the office, and then this other stuff
Hmm.
is the inner work. And where I've gone and where I would answer that question now, it's more around an awareness. It's around the inner work isn't something I go and do. The inner work is something that I'm aware of in any moment, and in that way, it's a constant practice. I had somebody recently tell me like, "Hey, you used to do a bunch of inner work, now you don't do any." I was like, "Well, what makes you think I don't do any?" And they said, "Well, you're not part of men's groups, and you're not, you're not meditating as much anymore, and you're not." Doing masterminds and growing and reading self-development books, you're not doing the inner work. And I say, oh, that's really interesting because that's probably how I would have defined inner work before, by doing all those things. And while those are great and those are good practices, it's kind of like now it happens in every moment. Can I catch those moments at work when someone says something that triggers me?
Hmm.
And can I just stay there in that moment and react in the way that I want to react? And all that practice and all that training and all that stuff that I did before helps me get there, certainly, but it's not the inner work. So that's what, the inner work now is like whatever the moment is in front of me, how I'm interacting with it.
Hmm.
That's it. And a lot of that, and still a lot of that is very unconscious. It's just, input in, input out. But now it's when I can catch those moments and do something about it.
Hmm.
Because there's plenty of those moments where I catch it. I'm like, that feels too good. Keep going. So yeah, I don't staying committed to. I think the practices do help with that. They help with the number of times I'm aware of what I'm doing and where I'm at. And there have also been times where I've been, let's call it, out of practice, right? Doing the practice of inner work, not the inner work itself, where I can then look back at a period of a week, a month, a quarter, and like, wow, I felt lost. I felt lost in that month. I felt lost in that quarter. Like, what happened? Where did it go? Why was I reacting that way? I had a pretty stressful time in the past few months, job changes and moving physical locations and big decisions and health stuff and like all hitting at the same time. And how I reacted to things, how I was in those moments, looking at it, looking back, is like I was like, wow, like I was really scared. I was really afraid. I was reacting to those things, and I had the me monster came out, and so I look back and it's like not a surprise, like no shock. Was I meditating? Was I working out? Was I keeping my body in good shape? So like I'm
Hmm.
not saying that inner work isn't those things. I think those are the practicing of the inner work, which allows me to play the game.
Hmm. A little bit of proactiveness up front, very heavy proactiveness of going to masterminds and being in these groups that now give you the ability to just be reactive. But as you do that, you kind of made the point of you still need some consistency, like proactive consistency.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that seems like your formula, and I can relate to that a lot. Is not being able to meditate or take that reflective time, and you do become not who you want to be at sometimes.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good way to say it. It's like, wow, wow. How did that guy show up there? That guy
Yeah.
sucks. But yeah, that's right. I think it's the proactivity, the kind of the practice and the training before we do anything. And this is similar to building any kind of skill or even sports. You start off with the little tiny things. I mean the very old quote like chop water, carry wood, right? Like
Mm.
that's a practice, that's a training. Mr. Miyagi, like those sort of things. Like those sort of things are important and they take a conscious initiative to go do those things so that you can play the game and play it well.
Good. So, over your years of experience with your inner work, what do you think are one or two things that you've learned and applied into your life that really made a difference?
I think working with others, in that way, it's very similar to a lot of sports as well. So you can only get so good on your own. There's just, and it happens so much faster. I know there's a lot of to pull in the current environment, a lot of work from home versus work in the office conversations going on right now. And I get the work from the office mentality at times because when I'm with people and they're reflecting on their experiences, it makes mine so much more rich. Like I see things in them to tell me about myself. And so I think that's one is this is not a solo sport. My first reaction now isn't let me go pick up a book or listen to a podcast. It's like let me call up a buddy and check in and let them know like where I'm at. Um, how I apply it to my life is all over the place. I would say that if we were to measure the depth of conversations that I used to have, even with best friends and family members, it was a 2 out of 10. That is I played two at all times. I think deep in the beginning of the inner work, I was trying to force an 8 every single time, and that was super weird too. Um, and so I think like the application of it is like now when I know I need to be at an 8, I can bring us to an 8 and like ask that a buddy or I know who to call that can go to an 8 with me. And sometimes 2 is great also. So being able to play that range within relationships is really powerful. And not every conversation has to be a 10, you know. Sometimes it's just fun to not do that. The other thing that I use constantly, all day, every day, when I can, it's like where is my inner state at in any moment, like emotionally, like what is the intelligence of my emotions telling me like where I'm at in any moment. I think that's a huge one. I think especially in the business sense, I was all neck and above 100% of the time, and I would say I'm semi successful when doing that, and it feels a lot safer. But boy, when I lead with my heart and I'm able to play more intuitively, I have a lot more fun. I can understand better where I'm at and where the person I'm working with is at also. And that's just and it's highly effective.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
not necessarily a tactic, but it's a lot more fun. And so I wonder sometimes why I don't go down that path more often. And it's so easy to shoot back up into my head and play there, especially in a work setting. So I'd say those two things, like play with others, and let my like emotions and heart lead in a lot of situations where my head wants to.
Yeah. When you're talking about your old self with a 2 and then now you're more like an 8, when you are meeting people, it's interesting that now you probably have the ability to talk to that 2 in a sequential way to peel back the layers of the onion. And it's really cool when you can get them to a 3 or 4 and starting to
Yeah,
see this.
if you want to, right? And if they're willing to, I think that's a really big part of it. And there's been some people in my life where that's just not where we're going to go, and that's okay. And I can decide what conversations like that, what part they play in my life, and that's phenomenal. So I think it's I only knew what a 2 was, did a little bit inner work, wanted to go to an 8 or 10 every single time. Realized actually, I'll give you a good story. So pretty early on in my like let's say inner work journey, I had just met Becca, and she was introducing me to her family for the first time.
Hmm.
And so we went down to her family's house, and there's a couple other friends, my friends around too. And I was at the dinner table, and we were at a 2. The whole table was at a 2, just chit chatting about nothingness. And so I just broke in hard with transitions. We're all going through transitions at times. Rich, you're retiring. Let's talk about your transition. Like it was like just trying to force an 8. and, and I still get a lot of crap from the friends that are at that table, including my wife Rebecca, about transitions. As a matter of fact, anytime the word transitions comes up, I get a side eye, and it's very funny. So yeah, I think there's no need now to force the 8, and I can
Yeah.
play it just a little looser, and that makes for I think more meaningful conversations, whether they're a 2 or an 8.
Yeah. But I think that's a great lesson for anybody that just dives in the inner work and just loves it so much. I need more to be aware of how you're talking and going about with others too. That
Yeah.
similarly, you're not jumping into 8s with the
It's
twos.
something I noticed. I would say this fairly early on in my journey as well, is I get to meet some people who I would to this day considered very high beings, people that have been doing the inner work journey for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And I find those people to be very light and to be very funny in a lot of
Mm,
ways. And
mm,
it's almost like they've reached a point where they've learned something that allows them to just play at that level that doesn't feel too heavy, and they can go deep. And so they've got that range. I always thought that was funny because when I think about a spiritual person, a Buddha like sort of person, like they in my mind they come across as like we're going to 10 every single time, and I haven't found that to be true.
yeah, sometimes they can say the simplest things that hit you the right way.
Yeah, yeah.
I always think about challenges in our experience with the mastermind and hearing about your other ones that you've done in different ones. Is there any challenge that sticks out to you that you really had a big lesson from?
Oh my gosh, totally. It was the very first push-up challenge that we did as a group. I had committed to doing it, and I can't even remember now where along the way I decided to not do it. And I didn't think that was a big deal. I was just like, whatever. Like I'm just not going to do it. It's not a problem. And then I was on a call with Keith, I believe it was,
Mm-hmm.
and he told me how disappointed he was because he was looking forward to doing this thing with me. And that was a light bulb for me where I was like, wow, like my actions that I thought were just about me had an impact on somebody else. And that sucks. And so that was a real lesson in integrity and communication and understanding. That was huge. I'll never forget that one.
Mm-hmm.
Push-up challenges are great for a lot of other things and challenge a lot of other, physical and mental and everything else. But I think the most important one for me was the one where I didn't do any push-ups and got that feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Keith I was able to be honest with you like that because in the hindsight, it is just a simple challenge, but there's so much behind it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. That was really an important one for me. I was kind of confused, as a matter of fact. And I think this is the risk that we run whenever we're giving people our honest feedback is how are they going to take it and what are they going to do with it? And Keith took a chance there. That was pretty early on in our relationship too. And I could feel myself in that moment bristle a little bit, like, why does this matter to you, dude? Like, like
Mm-hmm.
do the push-up challenge. Do I do the push-up challenge? Get off my fucking back. Right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
so easy to go there. But like he said it in a way where I had to take a look at it. And I had to take a look at my behavior associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big moment for me. I think the other thing, Tony, and this wasn't a specific challenge, but something that was a huge behavior shift for me, given that I was late for this call, it's not great, but like being on time for things, like kind of staying in integrity with doing what we say we're going to do. And I've very much noticed in my life that when I am making commitments and keeping commitments, my energy stays pretty high, unless I overcommit, of course, but that's a different story. Where I'm leaking, where I'm like making commitments, and not quite meeting them professionally, personally, relationally, I feel my energy dip.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, even if I'm sitting here at this computer doing some work and I feel my energy dip, I get a little foggy in the brain. I'm like, what did I commit to that I'm not doing right now? Like usually nine
Mm-hmm.
times out of 10, that's the answer. So just the commitment of we're going to show up when we say we're going to show up, we're going to be on time. That rigidity is not something that I grew up with or played with even. So I think that was a really important one to me, even if it wasn't a formal challenge.
Yeah. And even some men's groups where they fine you for not being on time really helps
Mm.
people get in line because at the end of the day, just what you said is super important for everyone in that group to have that integrity.
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Another thing that you and Dom were together on is all those episodes you did for the Great Man Mastermind on the
Hmm.
podcast, different subject matter experts coming in on various topics. And have you reflected on that experience and said, here's some of the coolest things or, big insights I took away from either the content or just the whole experience?
Yeah, yeah. I think I'll talk to the second part first, the whole experience. Something I absolutely loved about doing that podcast with Dom is that it allowed me to express and just be exactly who I was, and to just show up.
Hmm.
That's it. As long as I'm showing up and I'm trying to do like me the best I can do me, like that's all that was needed there. And that taught me like the importance of someone creating a container. And Dominic was the leader on that, right? He would kind of create the container, pull in the guests, and lead the topics, and I could come in and provide color commentary. And so now those roles have reversed for me in a lot of ways, like at work, where I'm the one creating the container, allowing people to come in and flourish and just be who they are.
Hmm.
So I think overall it was fun outside of just creating and having fun and ideating. So I think when I think about that time period with Dominic and the podcast, like I have like a ton of fond memories, and they aren't necessarily of any one podcast.
Yeah.
They're of the overall process. There were now some podcasts or some guests that were really outstanding. I think one that pops up is this guy named Frank King, and he is a comedian, and talked on the subject of depression. And that was something very foreign to me. And so he was able to package a really hard conversation into something that was very funny. Like he was a master at that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned something that day. I think we had some other topics on the menstrual cycle
Hmm.
that I still reflect on and still use. That was a phenomenal one. So yeah, there was certainly some episodes that stood out, that and what's funny, those episodes that were really good, they're usually ones where Dominic and I didn't talk that much.
So it's
It's
been fun.
usually a really great guest.
Yeah. Cool. I've always wondered what your reflection was on that because you did like over 350, right?
Did a lot. Did a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah. I think it kind of scratched a creative itch as well. And I know you've got that streak too, Tony, and some of the things that you do and you create. And it also provided a great place for reflection. We were going through the men's group at the same time, the mastermind at the same time. So it provided a great place to just like, instead of just going through it once, gosh, we can hit this a few times. It's another reason like what you're doing here is so beautiful.
Hmm. Thank you. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to share today with us?
Yeah, I think I look back at our mastermind time. That was a pretty wild time going through COVID, a bunch of guys that we didn't know. I look back at that as not just like a high growth time, but like a really like connected time.
Hmm.
That container helped me to connect to myself and like really understand direction and what we're good at and all those things. But like really feel connected to the guys in the group as well. And that was really, really beautiful. And I think I look back on that with fondness, not sadness in terms of not having something like that now, but an appreciation for what that moment was, and realizing that those types of moments and those kind of types of connections, like they don't last forever, even if it seems like they will, like in the moment. But they're wildly, wildly important. And like, what's cool is that even though I don't talk to like all the guys still, I like seeing every once in a while the chat pop up or everything else. Like, it makes me happy to know the men that I was with during that time period in life are out there doing the good work. In a certain way, and to say it another way, our group became a net exporter of the beliefs that we held collectively together, and is now planting those seeds in whatever part of life that they're in. For me, it happens to be at work here in San Francisco with my wife and family, and to think how everybody else is doing that in their respective areas is a really beautiful like thing to think about.
Yeah. Yes. It seems like each guy is going off in some small fashion here and there with some creativity. What would you say to your younger 22, 23-year-old self now that you know all this stuff on inner work?
What I would say is about the path, and what a misnomer I think that is. I think first of all that when it comes to spirituality, and feeling connected to something more than just self, that there is no one path. I grew up in a really, really strict Christian household, and I learned a lot of good things that I still take with me today. But I think one thing I was taught is that there's one path and one path only. And what this has opened my eyes to, and some of the experiences with inner work, is that like there are so many paths. So there's no one right path. And so I think the searching for that right path and the only path is a fool's errand. And so I think that's the one thing. I think as a younger kid, a younger adult, I was trying to find that one path. Like somebody has to understand what that path is. I want to follow that path. And the reality is like there is no one path for one person or let alone multiple people. So I think that's the first thing is that there's no one path. Learn how to develop your kind of emotional intelligence, intuition to follow the path that feels right in that moment and be okay with the pivot. I think that provides a lot of like strength and a lot of knowing of like that's okay, like this is where I'm at right here, and this is where I'm going to make decisions, from here. What I thought when I started this inner work is like, wow, like I'm reading all these things and taking this all information and doing these cool experiences and meeting these cool people and feeling so connected. Like the path is just this, and you just keep going up and you keep getting higher. And the reality is that I think just like there was a season for our mastermind, there are seasons of different levels and types of growth for what this inner work, inner journey really is. And I think that we were all on a rocket ship, man, like all together, and we were at blast off.
Yeah.
And I hit a point where I was just like, oh my gosh, like I can't talk about it anymore. I just need to be in it and do it in
Hmm.
whatever element that we have that is presented in front of me in life. And so that's been great. And what I've noticed is kind of I don't know, like a turn here and a turn there, and now feeling a little bit of a desire, kind of that inner intuition is telling me, like, okay, cool, like you did that for a little while. Now, like, what's next? I don't know what it is, but there's something that feels like inner work, that feels like growth and development, that is different than what I'm doing right now and what I have been doing for the last, like, let's call it year or 2 years. So I think that's the other thing I tell younger self is like, hey man, like this path, it's not linear. Like you may think it is on day one and day 100, but it ain't linear. And that's
Hmm.
okay too.
When you said to be able to pivot, I know I've struggled in the past with, no, I can't pivot. I got to be doing this. I didn't reach
Mm,
my goal or something. But there's something about the inner work piece where perhaps it's the men around you that help, or maybe it's just more
mm.
of a deeper self acceptance, self love. It's like, okay, I know myself pretty well now. I can accept
Yeah.
new path, new way because this
Yeah,
feels right.
allowing that to come through because I could almost feel it when you're talking about it. It's like, no, I need to finish that thing. It's like that's coming straight from your head. Like,
Yeah,
okay, like, and there's some really good reasons to like really finish things, right? But that's not what this is. This is a different game,
right.
and allowing ourselves to kind of go, and then saying, like, let me check in, let me check in.
Yeah,
Nope, I'm feeling something a little bit different, and that's okay. Yeah,
yeah, beautiful.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
that's it for today, Brian. I appreciate all the
Great.
insights. This is great. This has been fun.
Yeah, Tony. Thanks, man. It's good to go back and kind of feel where we were on that rocket ship together and like and what that was like. So thanks for doing this. I'm really looking forward to hearing what all the other guys had to say as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, man.
Cool.